Love is audacious. Self-love, in a world that seeks to enforce conformity, is a radical act. I don't have statistics or data to share with you today. All I have is my story, and it is one of transformational love. My journey with radical self-love began a number of years ago when I was living in Portland, Oregon. It was a winter day on a Saturday morning, and my wife was out of state on a retreat she'd been looking forward to. And I was stretching when I felt a lump. It was hard and very obviously not supposed to be there. Because I had worked in radiology clinics, a cancer institute, and many years as a medical illustrator, I knew immediately what it was. And because it was a Saturday, all I could do was leave a voicemail for my doctor, and my wife would have been hard to get a hold of, and I didn't want her driving 6 hours home with this scary information. So there I was, with a lump in my chest that felt like 1,000-pound weight. I was alone with this information. Like many people in the US, I've known far too many loved ones who have battled cancer, and at that point in time had two close friends who had recently lost this battle. So this sudden look at an early death hit me hard and sucked the air right out of my lungs. I felt a complete sense of despair and a deep fear that felt like it would overcome me. At some point, I decided to go for a walk. I'd managed to drag myself out of the house, and I went to the waterfront esplanade in Portland. There's a big river called the Willamette that cuts the city in half, and there's all these bridges across it. It's a great place to think. As I began walking, my legs felt like cinder blocks, sluggish and cumbersome. Everything was blurry through my tears. As I was walking, I started thinking about all of the people I love and thinking, do they know how much I love them? Do they know what they mean to me? Their faces were flashing in front of my mind's eye, as well as little snippets of joy we've experienced together. And this feeling of gratitude for all of the wonderful people in my life washed over me. The feeling was visceral and warming. Because the terrible depressed feelings enveloping me all morning were in such stark contrast to this feeling of gratitude, I decided to name everything I could think of to be grateful for. I walked and walked for hours that afternoon. At first I named big things, obvious things that I was grateful for, and then I began to expand, name things that I take for granted every day. Like, I remember feeling grateful for the warmth of the sun on my back and the fact that it was sunny at all that day. Trust me, that is unusual for a Portland winter. Next, I began feeling grateful for my physical body, my legs, which were carrying me, my eyesight to see the sun sparkling on the water. All of this gratitude began to really change how I felt in my body. I was still scared and sad, don't get me wrong, but the physical sensation of sheer terror had been replaced by what I can only describe as love. Connecting with the things I love in the world brought me peace, and it got me through one of the scariest days of my life. Even today, years later, gratitude connects me with love in the moment. I challenge you, after you watch this, set a timer on your phone for 2 minutes. During that time, name gratitude for as many things as you can think of. Then just take note of how you feel afterwards. Seriously, you have 2 minutes. Try it. This was a real lesson for me, and it's something that I have practiced often in the days and years since. There are all kinds of ways to integrate a gratitude practice into your life. I highly recommend keeping a daily gratitude journal. For a number of years now, my wife and I end each day by telling each other the highlight of our day. And now our 4-year-old asks us the highlight of our day at the dinner table. I used to think that it was joy that brings about gratitude. But now I think it's the opposite. I think that it is gratitude that generates joy and love. That brings me to another lesson that I learned through my journey with cancer. I had begun to feel truly grateful for my body on that walk, for so many things that I take for granted every day about my physical body. As time inched closer to the day of the surgery to remove the cancer from my body, I began thinking about healing. And I realized that I had a bad habit. I noticed that every time I saw myself in a mirror or caught a reflection in a window, that I saw this reflection with criticism. I realized, in fact, that I had a habit of sending hatred to my body. Pretty much every time I saw myself in a mirror, I would see myself, but only through the lens of my, quote, flaws. I saw this really clearly in my mind's eye, that I had been sending hate to my body for nearly as long as I can remember, and I thought, how am I going to heal my body while sending it hate? I made a promise to myself that day that I would never again send hate to my body. My body is beautiful. My body is whole. My body is sacred. It got me through cancer and everything else life has thrown my way. And here's what I want each and every one of you to know. You are beautiful, you are whole, and you are sacred. Right now, in this moment, as is. We are constantly bombarded with messages of, you're not enough this, you're too much that. You're not man enough, you're not woman enough, you're not special. These messages come from all sides, and it's really easy to internalize them. Then the messages of not enough and too much start echoing from inside our own minds, and they make us want to hide. I had been hating my body for all kinds of reasons. But the thing is, I'm not alone. We can all relate to these messages in some form or another. When we hide our most authentic, vulnerable selves, we also hide our growth. The truth is that we are all going through change, through transformation. Some of us are going through intentional changes. Others, we might be changing through the mere fact of growing older each day. But we are all transforming every day. And you and I, we get to love ourselves today. Don't kick the can of loving yourself down the road. You don't have to wait until someday to start loving yourself. Because I guarantee when that someday comes, you'll have new goals. And that's okay. You get to have goals. You get to change your life if you need to or want to. You get to change your body if you need to or want to. But you get to love yourself through those changes. You get to love yourself today. Each and every one of you is beautiful, whole, and sacred, just as is. One of the things that grew from my dedication to radical self-love was permission. Permission to do what I love. That's me in my happy place. Most of the time, I'm a fine artist. I go by trans painter. Get it? Trans painter. I decided to treat my fine art with the same respect that I treat my day job. I dedicated to myself that I would spend at least 10 minutes per day making the art that I wanted to make. I could spend the whole rest of the day making work that makes money, but for a minimum of 10 minutes a day, I'd go into my studio and make art for me. It's surprising how fast a body of work can add up with a commitment to 10 minutes per day. After 2 years, I found myself making work that I knew was different. I was on to something. I had found my thing. For me, my thing is making portraits of my community. I create larger-than-life paintings of transgender and non-binary people because I love going to art museums and galleries. I love seeing giant artworks taking up bold space. And I see a real lack of representation of my community in those spaces. In learning to love myself, I am becoming more able to love others. and I hope that love comes through in my paintings. I'm working to build reflections of my community and our diverse truths to help fill the gap. I see in my community a group of people who have something to teach. These are all individuals who have looked inside themselves and said, this is who I am, and I'm going to live with integrity. No matter what the world around me says, I'm going to live my truth. My community's very existence is a radical act of love. In loving myself enough to give my own artwork time to develop, I ended up finding my calling. Love helped me transform my life in 3 key ways that I want to share with you today. Number 1, start with gratitude. You can do this anytime and anywhere. It doesn't even take that long. It will improve your outlook. It will help you deal with whatever's in front of you, even if you're dealing with terribly difficult things. Take 2 minutes. Get some fresh air if you can. Think of 10 things you're grateful for. Then go back to your day. I'm not saying this will solve your problems, but it will shift your internal world. Gratitude connects you with love in the moment. Number 2, practice radical self-love. What do I mean when I say radical self-love? I mean notice. When you hear those mean messages in your head, acknowledge them and then replace them with affirmation. I haven't got it all figured out yet, and I still struggle some days, but that's why it's called a practice. You get to love yourself today and try again tomorrow. And know this, you are beautiful, whole, and sacred, just as is. Number 3, prioritize your passion. Let it take up space. Too often, our inner critics tell us our passions aren't enough, aren't special, or silly. Owning our passions and dreams in the world is a vulnerable and powerful act, whether we're giving time in our schedules, voice in a story, or physical space in our homes or galleries. Prioritizing our dreams and investing in our passions is a practice of self-love. And it's also a powerful way to share that love with the world. I was watching when Lena Waithe, a Black queer woman, accepted her historic Emmy and said, the things that make us different, those are our superpowers. She reminded all of us who are a little different to understand that loving yourself is a superpower. You know, we're all a little different. When we practice shifting fear into gratitude, we build happier lives for ourselves. And by accepting ourselves and living authentically, we inspire others to do the same. I know these 3 practices can change our internal worlds. And I believe that maybe, if we practice these 3 simple things, we could change the rest of the world too.